covered the skills required for a business analyst, and we also saw a clear roadmap on how to become a business analyst step by step. Okay, so now moving on to the next module, that is the requirement gathering and analysis stage. So in order to understand that, let me first give you guys a quick recap. Okay, so all right. So over here, you are a business analyst and the organization or the corporation you work for wants to launch an app. So let's say it's a customer support app. Now, in order to launch this app, in order to develop this app, the developers are facing some of the questions like what and how. Now, let's quickly see what are these questions exactly. So the developers want to know what features your app should have, what problems it needs to solve, how do you research the market, and how to begin developing the application. Now, these are some of the questions that you as a business analyst will be helping them solve. Now, how exactly you will be doing them? So this is one of the most important step of problem solving in any organization, which is requirement gathering and analysis. The documentation and validation come later on. So these are basically the four steps or the four stages that help you reach to a conclusion and help these developers answer questions like this. Okay. So whatever insights or whatever gatherings that you are going to get, you are going to document them. So I'm going to make things a little easier for you. First, I'm going to help you understand this with the help of an analogy, that is cooking a meal. Okay. So moving on to the first stage, that is requirement gathering. Okay. So whenever you're cooking a meal, you won't just go ahead and cook whatever you like, right? You're going to go and ask everybody who is going to eat that meal what they want to eat and how they want their meal to be. So say if you're living in a family and your mom says that I want to have something light. Okay. So maybe she's on a diet and she wants to have just salads or greens. Okay. Then you have your dad saying he wants something spicy. Okay. Then you have your grandmother saying that she wants to eat something that contains a lot of veggies. Again, she's health conscious. And then you have your younger brother who's saying he wants to have anything other than veggies. Okay. So again, these are a lot of contradicting statements that the family members are giving, and it can be annoying at times. But again, this is how it happens. So anyway, so you're supposed to fulfill their demands somehow. Now, the first stage is requirement gathering. Basically, you gather whatever the different people or the different parties involved in a particular project want. Okay. So over here, your stakeholders or your people of interest are your family members. Okay. Your mom, dad, grandparents, your brother, sister, whoever is eating a meal in your family. Okay, so just like you wouldn't start cooking a meal without asking everybody what they want, similarly, in a project, you don't just start building something without asking everybody involved what exactly they are expecting. Okay, so when you are going for a requirement gathering, the first step is to identify your stakeholders. Okay, so stakeholders are basically anybody who is involved and will be affected by the project. Okay, then you need to ask the right questions. Okay, so over here, when we were cooking the meal, we asked what they want to eat and how they want their meal to be. Okay, so say if somebody says, I want a paneer sandwich, they could either say they want it to be spicy, somebody would say they want it to be crunchy. Again, there are different needs, right? So you need to ask the right questions so that they can exactly tell you what exactly they want in that application. So you need to have open-ended questions to get detailed insights, okay, just like we discussed. Now, when you are in a family of 5, 6, it's very easy to just go and ask everybody what you want and how you want it to be. But when you are in an organization, there are going to be more than 5 people or 6 people. They're going to be like 20, or if it's a bigger organization, it could even be more than 20 people, right? So how do you do a proper requirement gathering? So this is where techniques like interviews, workshops, surveys or questionnaires or observation or document analysis comes into the picture. Okay, so what are interviews? So you basically go ahead and conduct one-on-one sessions with the stakeholders. Okay, so once you identify the stakeholders, you say, okay, these are the people that are really involved and will be affected by the project. And these are also the people that can be approachable. Okay, so if there are some higher authorities, obviously you cannot go and conduct one-on-one sessions with them. But if there are people who are approachable, you can go ahead and conduct one-on-one sessions with them and ask direct questions. You can also conduct group discussions with various teams. So if there will obviously be different teams involved, like the development team, the operations team, the sales team. Okay, it could be n number of teams involved. So you go ahead and conduct group discussions with all the teams. You could also forward surveys or questionnaires, Google Forms. It could be any sort of form for a wider feedback. You could do an observation, like watching the users interact with the current system. Okay, so if you already have an application or you already have some sort of system incorporated, you can watch how the users are interacting with it. Okay, so earlier we had taken the example of users adding the items to the cart but not going ahead with the purchase. So this is where you can have an observation implemented in the system, where you observe where exactly things are going wrong in your current system. Okay, then you have document analysis, which is basically reviewing the existing reports, manuals, or systems. Again, it is similar to observation, but over here you have it written down. Okay. Okay, so moving on to the second step, which is requirement analysis. So let's understand what this basically means. Now, in the example we just discussed, we had some of these gatherings. Okay, so these are our requirement gatherings. Now, the issue over here is there's a problem with our gathering. So this is where you are analyzing your gatherings and you found a problem. So in this stage, this is where you analyze whatever gatherings you have at hand. Okay, so you realize that your dad wants spicy and your grandma wants mild, basically the veggies that she suggested. Your brother doesn't want veggies, but your mom insists on something light, something healthy. Okay, so what do you do in such a case? Because you know that mild and spicy don't go together. You cannot have something healthy without veggies. Somebody wants veggies, somebody doesn't want veggies. So, what exactly do you do in such a situation? So, in this particular stage, you also come up with a solution. Basically, you take some time with your gatherings, your insights, and you try to come up with a solution. Okay. So, this is where you come up with a solution, like maybe we can go for a spicy paneer wrap. Okay. So, this can be fulfilled for both the brother and the dad, because dad wanted something spicy and your brother did not want some veggies in it. So we can do a no veggie paneer wrap for your brother, and for the dad, we can add veggies also. And then for the mom and the grandma, we can go for a mild veggie soup. Okay. So over here, there's something light for your mom and veggies for your grandma. Okay. So just like that, in an organization as well, you understand the business requirements, the stakeholder requirements, solution requirements, and the transition requirements. Now, what are these exactly? So, first, you understand the business requirements. That is, these are the high level goals of the organization. That means these are given the highest priority. Okay. So, basically, whenever you have contradictory requirements or statements, this is how you can decide which statement or which requirement is to be given higher priority. So the business requirement, that is the major goal of the organization, has to be given the utmost or the highest priority. Okay, so I'm going to give you an example after we understand what stakeholder requirements are. So stakeholder requirements are basically the needs of specific users or departments. Okay, so business requirements are basically the goal of the entire organization or business as a whole, whereas stakeholder requirements are basically the individuals involved. Okay, so it could be like a VP. Stakeholder requirement could be a requirement by a VP, or maybe the sales department or the marketing department as a whole. Okay, so basically they come one step lower than the business requirement. Now, why they want to remove a video from the homepage of their website? Mainly to increase the speed and the SEO. Now, if the speed and the SEO of a website increases, automatically more click through rate and more conversions, right? So basically, this is the major goal of a business. Now, over here, the marketing team Now, at the same time, the marketing team does not want to remove this particular video from the homepage. Why? Mainly because of branding. Okay. So the marketing team insists that if we keep the video on the homepage, we are going to have better branding and better marketing. So this is basically how two requirements can clash. Now, what you as a business analyst needs to consider or give more priority is to the business. Okay, you will always give more priority to the business requirement. Their goal is clearly more important to the organization as a whole, right? Now, you as a business analyst will have to give more priority or give more importance to the requirement of the business. Okay, since their goal is also very important to the organization. So this was a very simple example of a clash between two requirements and how you're supposed to prioritize or give more importance to one. Okay. Then you have solution requirements. So these are basically the functional features and non-functional, like performance, security, etc. Okay. All those needs you need to take care of. Then you have transition requirements. So whatever current system you have integrated in your business, what all changes you will have to make in order to integrate the new one. Okay, so in order to move from A to B, okay, so A is your current system, and when you move to B, which is your new system, what all changes you will have to make, that is how much distance you will have to travel, what are the costs going to be in order to move from A to B. You need to consider all those requirements, all those factors into consideration, and then you need to come up with a solution. So this particular clash that we talked about and how we resolve it, that is how we give priority to one particular requirement, is also known as conflict resolution. Okay. Okay, now in order to perform requirement analysis, there are some tools that you can use. Okay, so there are use case diagrams which help you visualize how the users interact with the system. There are process flow diagrams which help you understand the existing system and the process to move to the new system. Then you have user stories, which are like the short narratives, like as a user, I want to. So basically, these are again similar to use case diagrams. Okay, then you have requirement traceability matrix. So this is the important one for scenarios like we discussed just now. Okay, so this is where you map each requirement back to the original business objective. Okay, so we'll understand all of these in detail. So first, let's go to the use case diagrams. Okay, so this is what a use case diagram looks like. Okay, so you have two figures over here. This is a visitor, basically your customer. So this is your customer, and this over here is your admin, basically the person who is handling the back end of your application. Okay, now over here in these ovals, what you can see are your use cases, hence the name use case diagram. Okay, so these ovals represent your use cases. Now, what all can a customer or a user do on a web page or an online store? Okay, so the user can place an order, he can cancel an order, and he can manage his order. That is, he can maybe change the delivery date if he's not available. He can postpone the delivery, or he can change the delivery address for a particular duration of the order placement. Right. So these are the only things that a user can do. Whereas an admin, he cannot place an order, but he can cancel an order. So in case the product is unavailable or logistics are not available, he can cancel the order. He can also manage the order, that is, he can tell the user that your order is going to be delayed or it is going to arrive early and things like that. He can also change the order status. So say if your order was on shipped previously and now it is on out for delivery, so your admin is going to change that. And the admin can also update the products on a website. Okay, so these are the use cases. Now let us understand all the components involved in a use case diagram. So let me just write. So first let's understand that this is a part of UML, which is nothing but Unified Modeling Language. Okay, so and we represent the different functionality or the functional requirements of a system for a user and the backend team. Okay, so what the system should do basically and who all it can interact with. So the first component that we have is actors. Okay, so our actors are basically the figures that we have in the diagram over here. Okay, so these are our actors. So basically the stick figures. So they can represent the users or the external systems that interact with the system. So always remember that you're going to have your user or your customer on the left hand side of your use cases and the admin on the right hand side. It can never be interchanged or done any other way. Okay, it's always going to be left the users and right the admins. Then you have your oval shapes. These represent a use case. Okay, so basically these are the main functions the system provides. So each oval is going to tell you what the user can do within the system or what an admin can do. So we already discussed place order, cancel order, manage order and things like that, right? Then the next thing that you have is your system. So basically your application over here, it was an online store or an e-commerce website. So this particular rectangle represents your system. Okay, let me just write it down over here. Then you have your system, which is your rectangle. And it is always going to be a vertical one, depending on your use cases again. So if you have a lesser number of use cases, you can have a horizontal one like that, but usually this one is preferred. Okay. Then we have our relationships. So I have already written down the relationships. I will just tell you how they are associated with the different types of lines. So there is a simple association between an actor and a use case. So over here, as we saw, these lines are representing the relationships. So a simple association could be just a line or a line with an arrow. Okay. Then we have something known as extended use case, where we are going to have a dotted line, okay, with an arrow, and we are going to have extends written in brackets like this. Okay, so the extended use case basically adds an optional behavior to the base use case only under certain conditions. Okay, so we need not go into detail right now, but I want you guys to just understand the basic components of a use case. So for example, we could have another use case in this system itself. I'm just going to extend the system to show you guys. Okay, so we have another use case called apply offer. Okay, and place order is going to extend to this particular use case. Okay, I'm finding it very difficult to write, but I hope you guys understood what I'm trying to tell you guys. That in some cases, maybe you can apply some offer on your order before you click that place order button, right? So this is not going to be every time, but it is going to be under some particular conditions. Okay, so maybe if your cart value reaches that particular limit where you can apply the offer, then you are going to be able to use this particular use case. Okay, so this is what extend relationship basically means. Okay, and then you have include, which is written similarly. Okay, so include is basically the behavior of the included use case, which is always executed as part of the base use case. Okay, so without exceptions, whenever we want something to happen by default, we use this particular relationship. Okay, so say for example, whenever we place an order, we should get an option of validating the payment. Validate payment. Okay, and this is going to be an included case. So I hope the different relationships are clear. The different components are clear in a use case. Okay, so in order to make things more clear for you, I'm going to go ahead and quickly show you guys another use case diagram for an e-commerce website. Okay, I'm going to do some part of it and I want you guys to take some time, pause this video and complete the rest of the use cases, maybe even add more actors as part of the system. Okay, so this is your system and this is going to be an e-commerce site. Okay, so over here you have your user. Okay, and in the back end, I'm going to have a service representative. And I'm going to have a manager. Okay. So the first thing that I'm going to make the user do is I am going to make him create a profile. Okay. And the next use case that I'm going to have is I am going to let him view the menu or view products. Okay. Then I'm going to let him place an order. And I'm also going to let him change order. Okay, so I think this is all for a user. For a basic e-commerce site, you can create your profile. Okay, you can also edit your profile. Okay, so maybe you can create another use case over here which says edit profile. So if you are getting me, basically all you have to do is think from the very beginning from a user perspective, see what all functionalities a user can access in a website or an application, and then go ahead and create a use case diagram. Okay, and similarly you can also think from perspective of backend people like service representative, a manager. So say a manager can update prices. Okay, change the prices of the products, update prices. Okay, I'm going to give this functionality to a manager. A service representative is not going to have this functionality. Maybe a service representative can track the order placement, the products that are displayed on the website. He can also track the change of order, but he won't have access to the functionality of updating prices. That will be only managed by the manager. Okay, so similarly, whatever different functionalities or use cases you are looking forward in a website, this is how you can go about creating a use case diagram. Okay, I hope this was simple and easy to understand. Now let us go ahead to the next tool, that is process flow diagram. Okay, so as we already discussed, a process flow diagram will help you understand the existing and the proposed process. Okay, so the new process that you want to get integrated into the system. So basically when you do all these things with the help of the tools that we're talking about, basically you get a more better idea of what is happening and what is going to happen, right? You can also look at the pros and cons while you are completing these processes, right? So over here you can see this is a process flow diagram. So this diagram is divided into 3 stages. Basically, it's telling the 3 stages of a process. So over here, your stage 1 is going to be your starting or your entry point. It goes through process 1, process 2, process 3, and then you move on to the second stage. You go on to process 1 again. Maybe this is a sub process of process 1. Then you enter the reprocess stage. And over here, as you can see, there are two particular arrows over here. So what this basically means is there can be an option of loop. So when you enter the stage 3, you have your first step as alternative 1. You can go back to process 1 and go to alternative 2, or you have the option of going to alternative 2 itself. Okay, and then you can see over here, this is your end process. So basically it's going to start with alternative 1, proceed to alternative 2 and end that process. Basically this is how a process flow looks like. Okay, you can go ahead and give names to your processes, define your stages to make the diagram even more clear. Then we have user stories. So user stories, as we already discussed, are like the narratives of user perspectives. Okay, so over here you could give a title. So say I want the title to be login functionality. Okay, then I can indicate the priority, whether it is high, medium or low. Okay, so this is where I indicate how high priority the work is. Then I also give an estimate, that is basically the time required. The time required to complete the user story. Okay, so how long it took me to complete this particular user story. So I could say it took me 1 day. Okay, so over here you have your description of user. So you can say, so what kind of user you are. So you can say as a customer. So as a customer, the customer wanted functionality, say reset password. Okay, so that what is the benefit of the customer? So that the customer can maybe access account if password forgotten. So this is how you can describe a user story. And then you have your acceptance criteria. So this is going to define the conditions under which the story is considered complete. Okay, so you can give the given, when and then. So you can say given I am on login page. When I click on forgot password, then what is the outcome of taking that action? The action is forgot password. Then I should be able to reset password through email. Okay, so basically I'm going to receive a link of reset password on my email. Okay, so this is what a user story looks like. So as a user, you are trying to give feedback on the application that is currently in the system or maybe still in the development phase. And as a customer, you are giving feedback on that particular application. Okay, so maybe this forgot password functionality is currently missing. And through the feedback of a customer, that particular functionality can be integrated. Okay. Then you have your requirement traceability matrix. Okay, the project name over here is online flight booking application. The name of this document is termed as BRD, that is business requirement document. Then you have your functional requirement document, and then you have your test case document. Okay, so this requirement traceability matrix basically consists of these three particular functions. Then you have your business requirement ID, which is BR1 and BR2. Then you have your business use case. So the first one is reservation module and the second one is payment module. Then you have your functional requirement ID and then you have your functional use case. Okay, so one-way ticket booking, round-way ticket and multi-city ticket booking. Okay, so one-way ticket booking, which are mostly prioritized, that is most of the people go for one-way ticket booking. That is why it is given on high priority. And multi-city ticket booking is also given on high priority. Then you have your test case IDs. So whether these functionalities are working correctly or not. Okay, so how many times these were tested, and the results I think are not included over here. Okay, so similarly it's done for the payment module as well, as you can see. So this is the basic format of a requirement traceability matrix. So as you can see in this requirement traceability matrix, you can clearly see all the business requirements mapped to their functionalities, and those functionalities are correctly mapped to the test cases. Okay, so this is basically the function of a requirement traceability matrix. So till now you have done requirement gathering. Then you did requirement analysis. And this is where you broke down what everybody wanted. You also resolved conflicts. And then you went ahead and created a balanced plan. Okay. So these are all the things that you achieved in a requirement analysis process. Okay. So moving on to the next stage, which is requirement documentation. Okay. So you already made a decision that you want to cook a paneer wrap and a my veggie soup. Okay. Now, how do you remember the different demands at each step of the process? Right now, you just have two demands, but that is not how it works in a corporate. Right? You are going to have multiple demands from multiple people. So that is when you need to write all those demands down or basically document them. Okay, so this is where our third step comes in the picture, that is requirement documentation. Okay, so basically this vector is also telling us the same. So basically we are going to go through multiple steps throughout the process, and at each step we need to remember what exactly a requirement was, and also remember that at each step there could be a change in the requirement. Okay, so you need to be flexible enough to make room for changes, and with that flexibility you also need to make sure that you are proceeding with the correct requirements. So this is why it's important to document them. Now, in this case, you would just maybe grab a piece of paper and write down whatever grocery you need, the recipe steps. Then, what else could you note down? Maybe you could also note down till when, or basically the time of completing the meal. Okay, and you could also note down what exactly needs to be cooked. Okay, so we will note down paneer wrap and soup. Okay, and whatever description that you need to remember. Okay, so paneer wrap, one needs to be spicy, then second one needs to be without veggies. Okay, then maybe the soup, one needs to be again containing a lot of veggies and so on. Okay, so basically you write all that down on a piece of paper. Now over here it's just two dishes and one piece of paper is enough. Now let's come back to our corporate world. So as a business analyst, in order to document your findings, you will be using these particular terminologies. Okay. So the first one is business requirement document. Then we have functional requirement document. Then we have software requirement specification, SRS. This is only for software related functionalities. So whenever you're dealing with a software application or any kind of software related work project, you will be using an SRS. Then you have user stories, use cases, which we already discussed, process flow diagrams, and requirement traceability matrix. Okay, so let us quickly look at BRD, FRD, and SRS. Okay, so the first one is business requirements document. So as the name suggests, this particular document is going to outline the high level business requirements, that is the needs, goals, and objectives from the business point of view, and these requirements are going to be given by the clients or the stakeholders themselves. Okay, then we have the functional requirement document. Again, as the name suggests, this particular document is going to highlight all the functions or features of the system or the project that are required in order to fulfill the business goals. Okay, so according to these needs, goals, and objectives, we are going to define a parameter of functions and features that are to be integrated in the particular system. Then we have the software requirement specification document, or the SRS. So this particular document basically acts as a blueprint, and it basically includes all the functional as well as non-functional requirements that are to be integrated in the system. Okay, and this document is basically used by the developers. Okay, so these are the different documents that we have, and this is what they look like. Okay, so we have this business requirement document, or the template, by San Francisco State University. So over here on the top, you have your project name, the sponsor, service owner, project manager, and the document date. Okay, then you have your proposed business state. So over here you provide a high level description of the business state. Okay, and then you have your business requirements. That is, you need to basically list all the requirements that the business has issued. Okay, so BRD. And then you have your functional and non-functional requirements. In the functional requirements document, you write all the functional requirements, like the application should be able to transfer money from one account to another. Okay, then in non-functional requirements, you can have an example like the website should load completely within 30 seconds. Okay, so this is an example of a non-functional requirement. Then you also have something known as a user requirement. So this is when you basically give out your application to the users, that is certain users, and they give you feedback. So for example, if the user needs to be able to log in online to use the application, so that option should be available. Okay. So that was your BRD and FRD. Then you have your SRS document. So your SRS, as we already discussed, is a very detailed document and acts as a complete blueprint for the developers. Okay, so whenever the developers begin developing that application, this is the document they refer to. So these are what the table of contents for a SRS document looks like. Okay, so you have your purpose, document convention. Okay, so overall description, that is, you define the product completely, how it is supposed to look, what are the user classes, the characteristics, what are the features, what is the operating environment, and everything. Okay, then you have your system features, that is the functional requirements. Then you have your internal requirements, your user interface, hardware interfaces, and so on. And lastly, we have the non-functional requirements. Okay, so this is what a detailed SRS document looks like. These three we have already covered, so I'm not going to repeat. You can just go back and revise these particular documents. And I have also put down the screenshots for the same, so you can go back and look at their formats. Okay. So now moving on to the requirement validation stage. So as we had discussed in the analysis stage, we decided two dishes. Okay, let me take you guys back there. So these were the two dishes that we agreed upon. That was only with ourselves, right? That is what we analyzed, and this was the solution to our analysis. Then we found the problem that there was a lot of mix and match and there was a lot of conflict of opinion. This was the solution we came up with. Now, in the validation stage, we need to make sure that whatever solution we came up with is something that the stakeholders also want. So in our case, it was mom and grandma. So we go and ask them if they're comfortable with soup, or soup sounds like a good option to them. And it is up to them. If they say yes, that is a completely good option, you will go ahead with your document that you have prepared. But if they decide that no, that is not something that they will want to go ahead with, you will have to go back to your step one, that is the requirement gathering stage. And then you need to reconsider that step and then come up with a better solution. Okay, so in our case, that is not the scenario. Over here, the mom has agreed that yes, I would like that. So this is why it is absolutely essential to double check with the parties involved, the stakeholders involved. Okay, so now in corporate world, before moving forward with the documentation you have prepared, you get all the stakeholders together and you review the documents, clarify the doubts, fix any gaps or conflicts, and get formal approval. Okay, so this is often through a sign off. So you basically ask the stakeholders, is this what you were expecting? Did you miss anything or did we miss anything? Are the features aligned with the goals? So as we already discussed, you can get the documents reviewed by the stakeholders. Okay, so that is basically whatever documents you have prepared in the previous stage, you will hand them over to the stakeholders. And once they review the documents, they will give you the verdict. You can clarify doubts. So in case you have any doubts while preparing the documents, you can also conduct a meeting with your stakeholders at that time. If there are any existing gaps or conflicts, you can also ask stakeholders to help you with those conflicts and then get them resolved. And then you can lastly get a formal approval. Okay, so basically you ask them to sign. So in order to achieve all this, you can either conduct a walkthrough, a peer review, or a prototyping. So a walkthrough is basically where you have the stakeholders go through the document with you, okay, line by line. A peer review is before you go to the stakeholder, you ask your peers, okay? So your peers could be maybe another analyst, or it could be a SME, okay? So you could first have your peers review your documents and then go to the stakeholders. And then lastly, we have prototyping. So prototyping is basically instead of handing over a document that is just written lines and written ideas, you create a demo or create a mock or a wireframe to give a more visual idea to the stakeholders that this is what I'm trying to implement. Okay, so that is what a prototype means. Okay, so this was all about requirement validation step. And with this, we conclude the 4 stages of our requirement gathering and analysis step. And if you guys have any sort of doubt or query, feel free to write it down in the comment section. I will get back to you as soon as possible.